tonight myself and Dave will be introducing you to Art with iPad. So some of you may have been familiar with some of the work that we've done already. So we're both art teachers from the UK, and I teach in South Wales and I teach art and photography. Dave, if you'd like to introduce yourself and just let everyone know what you do.
Hi everyone, I'm Dave. I teach secondary art as well. I'm in Hartlepool, live in Dunthorpe, but teach in Hartlepool. I've been there about 16 years now. So hopefully you're going to see some nice stuff that we've done, and then we're going to hopefully get you all to create some fabulous artwork after that.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a bit of an introduction as to why you think art is really important. So, is anybody else having sound problems? So I just noticed Robin said he can't hear anything. Sound okay? Yeah? All good? Great. So, oh, sorry, excuse me. Let's go back to there. Okay, so Seymour Papert, as some of you may be aware, did research into the use of technology back in 1973 and the impact it has on learning. And one of the key things that came through from that was the best learning takes place when the learner is in charge. So I believe this fully within art education, and it's something that self-expression is important, and particularly with COVID-19, the pandemic we're experiencing, lockdown, we've got areas of history that have been created that we've never experienced before. So it's really important that learners have the opportunity to express themselves and to access their emotions in ways that maybe they're not able to in other subject areas and other formats. So it's really important that we include art across the curriculum. So whether it's used within science, the humanities, languages, to allow them to express themselves and access emotions that they may not be able to access in everyday education. In addition to this as well, it's the one subject that can really empower learners, where every outcome is different. There's no right or wrong answer. There's some rules and guidelines we might put in place. However, there is no wrong answer with art. And another thing it allows for is for pupils to experiment and experience failure and build on that. Failure is not a bad thing when it comes to learning about sketching, drawing, and expressing themselves. So Intel carried out some research, and they found that youth makers, both male and female, were more likely to describe themselves as independent, hardworking, and solution-orientated individuals who were very social. And I think something we need to think about is what are the skills that we want our pupils of the 21st century to develop. If some of you were in on John Landis's session last week when we were looking at what happens after COVID-19, he mentioned the people age, the generation of our next group of pupils coming through. They need to be educated as individuals. They need to be creative, and they need to be able to connect with each other and collaborate in ways that we've never really allowed for before in the classroom. And there's been some research done by Intel, as mentioned before, that if pupils who are more likely to make, and particularly through art, especially for girls, they're more likely to end up pursuing degrees in computer science, engineering, and the information sciences. And they recognised that the reason they got into those areas as adults was that they were introduced to technology through art. So I think it's really important that we encourage our young people to be using the technology that we have access to, such as the iPad, to be able to create artwork, to have an interest and passion about technology going forward. So today's session, we're going to be looking at the impact of art on pupils, which we've just explored briefly. We're going to create a piece of artwork using the iPad, and we can also look at maybe how digital art can be used during blended learning. How can it enhance your lessons if you're using a blended learning approach? How can it encourage pupils to engage with learning at home more? So these are some of the questions you need to be thinking about throughout the session. If you want to pose any questions throughout, myself and Dave will be taking in turn to look at the chats and be able to answer any questions that you have. So Dave is now going to take over and show us a bit of a pupil showcase and show you some of the amazing work that our pupils have created.
Can you hear me all right, Laura? Hear me all right? Yeah. Okay. This is basically a project done with Year 7 students. This was the very first time they used the iPads. The painting on the left is a painting by an artist called Corliss Blakely, American artist. And she paints kind of really detailed kind of close-ups of fruit and vegetables and things like that. And the two on the right-hand side are two Year 7 pieces of work. Basically, just give them the iPad, show them the pepper, and then get them to experiment with brushes, and they can create things like that, just drawn on a black background straight into the iPad. It teaches them obviously observational skills, drawn from still life. Very, very successful, and that can be adapted to be used for any age group. But those ones there are actually Year 7s. This is a great little project, and this is similar to what we're going to do later on. These are Year 7s as well. Famous artists who we'll talk about later called Julie Norby. These are Year 7s again. They take a selfie in using the iPad camera, and then they can outline it, colour it, and you can see you can create a fantastic, fabulous class piece of work. You can see it doesn't have to be amazing. The quality of your line doesn't have to be amazing, but it really, really works successfully as a whole group piece of work, as an introduction again to the iPad and what you can do on the iPad. Ticks the boxes for the. It's very similar to the Everyone Can Create Apple scheme of work as well. It's kind of a continuation from that. And a lot of these projects, you will find that they are kind of sort of derived from the Everyone Can Create sessions, and just advanced a little bit. These ones you see here, hopefully you can see the difference here. These are GCSE versions of the previous slide, so based around Julie Norby. And you can see how they're slightly more advanced in they've explored light and dark on them. They've put extra detail on them. There's extra detail in the hair. And the quality of line is better as well. Just more time taken over them, and you can just see that the quality is generally better. So it works from Year 7 all the way through to GCSE level. These, hard to believe, but these three are from a Year 7 student. I was started teaching back in September, blown away with the work he'd done. So I said, have you tried any iPad stuff? And he hadn't. So I gave him an iPad and I said, I want to see what you can do with it. And basically he came up with some fabulous stuff, and they are very relevant to what we're going to be looking at in terms of what we're going to be creating ourselves tonight. But very, very accomplished. I've never seen a student like that. And then these are Year 10 students. These are produced during the lockdown period. I basically gave them two artists to look at, who we're going to look at tonight, and they produced those fabulous pieces of work. Year 10 students. The quality is fantastic, absolutely fantastic. You can see the light and dark that they've used, and the decorative backgrounds. Just a fabulous idea of composition and proportion, and just generally excellent artists. They're all doing GCSE art and design. These are by an artist called Ros Hall. He did some work for Apple when Procreate was first released. These are all done. This work here is done on the iPad. Obviously, you can now, so from the portraits you just see, these you can take it to the next level and explore different paint, explore a bit more realism. You can see these ones here. This is a mixture. Some Year 9, some Year 10, and some Year 11 portraits, based around the work of those by Ros Hall. Just more detail, exploring light and dark, exploring different brushes, just generally adding some more detail into them. Very, very successful. And the one on the left in particular was entered as a final piece for GCSE Art and Design last year. Again, we use the iPads all the way through from year 7. I've just seen that comment there, Alicia, there on Keynote. The Julian Opie ones, the first ones you saw, they can be done on Keynote. The later ones are Procreate, which is a more advanced painting app, basically. But you can see these ones here. This is a year 13 graphic student, incredible artist, and she's kind of embraced the iPad and uses it for everything now. She developed her own style. The two on either side, she basically reimagined for a graphics project. She basically reimagined horror movies or movies in kind of a animated style, which incredibly well done. And the one in the middle is just beautiful. If you see that up close, the level of detail and the light and dark is just incredible, really. Over to you, Laura.
Thanks, Dave. Okay, so this is a project that I started at the beginning of lockdown. So David Hockney, for those of you who are unaware, he's been making art for the last 50, 60 years, well-known pop artist who's known for experimenting with different media. So he started out with paint, traditional media, photography, and has now moved on to iPad art since 2009. And during the beginning of lockdown, he started to explore the countryside around him, and he started a project that was They Can't Cancel Spring. So the idea that we're going to miss out on loads of things, but they can't stop spring. So I set up this project where all pupils at my school at St Cyries in South Wales and staff were invited to come and create a piece of digital artwork of daffodils as inspired by David Hockney. And we've had some fantastic examples, and you can see from the range of work here that there's the same brief, all told to draw daffodils, but everyone has had their own approach. So we've got examples of work from year 7, which are the 11 to 12-year-olds, through to A levels. So this example is by Abby, and she decided to create a joiner. So she actually drew different sections of the daffodil together and then brought them to give a more distorted effect. So some really interesting effects. We will be sharing some artists at the end as well for you. So you'll be able to see different artists that you can apply to schemes of work. This is an example of A-level work. So Faith has just left us, and she's going on to do video game design and 3D drawing and rendering. So she has drawn this freehand. On the right-hand side of the screen, you're able to see her workings out. So she's taken a photo of the original mask, and then she's measured it out and sketched out as she would with a pencil. So this is more like digital painting. And then she's used different layers to be able to capture the shininess of the plague doctor's mask. This piece of work is by, well, she was a year 9 pupil. So when this was created, Sophia would have been 13 years old, 14 years old. So this is inspired by the work of Sarah Graham. So Sarah Graham is a hyper-realistic painter. She has done things like album covers for the Kaiser Chiefs, but she's also well known for creating these hyper-realistic paintings. This has actually been drawn on the iPad, and this is another example as well from the same class. Olivia, again, was 14 years old creating this, and you're able to see a process that she's gone through where she's building up the different layers of the artwork, starting off with the base colours and building it through to be able to capture the reflections within the work with the different shades and tone coming through. They've also managed to create the depth of field effect in the background by using a blurring tool within the drawing app. Okay, so we're going to explore now a little bit of drawing into GCSE photography, and I'm going to pass over to Dave for this part.
Hi everyone. I've been teaching GCSE photography for a long time, and a few years ago, when they looked at the curriculum for GCSE photography, they introduced, I don't know if anybody else does AQA art and design, but there's a required drawing element. So in order for the students to get a good grade or get any kind of grade, there has to be some kind of drawing element, and that's including photography as well. So initially you think, you know, might be quite difficult getting some drawing into photography. We use it kind of, you could do storyboards. We do what we call pre-shoot plans. So if they're going out to do a shoot, then they can do kind of storyboard it and sketch it up first. But the iPad has changed it completely. Excuse me. It's an absolute game changer, you know, even for kind of less able students. The idea that they can find a monster and clip art, and then they can draw it straight onto the photograph. Just really quirky, really fun. That's one of Laura's, which I think is the next one. Click that one back, Laura. This one here is fabulous. Again, we're going to show some artists and photographers towards the end, and hopefully you will be able to see where these have, where the influences have come from, or directly influenced from artists, because that's what it's all about, you know, showing influence and demonstrating influence from artists and photographers. And these, when you see Della Deso's work, I don't know if anybody's knows Della Deso's work, but this stuff is very, very similar, and it ticks all the right boxes. Fabulous work. Again, that's one of Laura's students.
Okay, so get your Apple pencils at the ready, because this is the point now where we're going to start developing your own self-portraits. So we'd love you to share your work today, and if you can use the hashtag iPadArt2020 as well as the other festival hashtags, that would be great, because we'd love to create a photo collage at the end of everyone's portraits and create a piece of artwork and possibly an augmented reality gallery out of them. So make sure you take note of hashtag iPadArt2020 to share your outcomes today. Okay, this is what our aim is going to be. We're going to aim to create a piece of Julian Opie artwork. I'm going to take you through step by step on how to create the portrait, and then Dave is going to take you through on developing tones and different layers of colours within it and a background. So I'm just going to switch over to share into my iPad, so bear with me. Okay, so hopefully you'll be able to work along with me. So if you can create a new presentation in Keynote, that would be great. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with Keynote, which most of you should be familiar with it, but I know we've got a few guests who aren't from the community here this evening. If you click on the plus, and you need to add in your selfie into the Keynote. Stretch it so that it fills a section of slide, and I just like it to sit on the side. It's up to you where you draw it on your slide, but I personally always like to work from the left hand side. Once you've placed your photograph, tap on the photo, and what I recommend you do is if you reduce the opacity slightly, so even to about 60%, so when you are drawing onto the Keynote slide, you're able to see the outlines clearly. The first thing that we're going to be looking at is creating our outline. So I tend to use the pen tool, and think about your thickness of line. If we look at Julian Opie's work, it's quite, they have quite thick outlines on them. So consider your line width. So I tend to go for the middle one, and we're going to start off with a black outline. What we need to take note of is if we draw solid shapes, we're able to fill them quite easily with the paintbrush tool. So we have a quick tap to fill, and it reduces the amount of time. So some of the examples of work that we'll show you later on in redefining become a lot easier if you have fixed shapes. So if everyone can start with the outlines, I recommend that you start with the outline of the head, following around the shape of the head when you're drawing, and making sure that your lines connect up. If you want to go for a thicker line, that will be fine. When you're drawing the hair, particularly if you've got a hairstyle like I have in my photo, make sure that your lines are connecting up. So then you've got, it'll give you that solid shape. So I need to go in a little bit closer and go in. Also, if you zoom in, you will have better accuracy, particularly with Keynote. So I always recommend going a little bit closer, particularly for details, so you can see where the lines are connecting coming through. So basically we want to get all the outlines done first around the head, and then we'll do the hair, and then the features and the face tend to be the last section. So making sure that you're connecting your lines the whole time. If you don't connect your lines, that's fine, because you can just go back in and just join them up afterwards. So I'm going to give you a bit of time to do this. I'm going to do mine quite quickly, so then I can support if you've got any questions. Dave will be able to answer some of the questions for you as well. And just make sure you get the basic outlines of your head. The next thing that you're going to do then is looking in at the face. So Julie and Opie with the examples of photos. The drawing tool, if you haven't got an Apple Pencil, is in the plus at the top. So if you click on the plus, and then you'll be able to see drawing, and then the drawing tools will come up for you as well. Sorry, I didn't think about that. Once you've done the outlines, you then can zoom in, and with the characteristics of Julie and Opie's work is that it's really simplified. So the eyes just tend to be circles, and then you have really basic outlines for the eyebrows and the mouth, and the nose tends to be just the nostrils. For those of you who are familiar with the British band Blur, Julie and Opie actually did the 2001 album cover for them. And you'll find examples of work in the National Portrait Gallery in London as well. So there's loads of examples. He's also created a number of pieces of moving artworks as well. So if you're in Dublin around about, I think 2007, 2008, on one of the main streets, there's some moving Julie and Opie artwork. And there's also some examples of his work that he's completed and are on display on one of the train stations in London near the Tower of London. So as you can see with my lips, I haven't drawn all my teeth in, I've kept it simple. So I followed the basic outline of the top of the mouth and the bottom lip. And then I'm going to just outline my eyebrows. Again, if you're not too sure, you can always click undo, but you've also got the rubber tool, which is at the bottom there, which you can adjust the thickness to. And then you've got your different textures as well. Once you're happy with your drawing, click done in the drawing section, and you can pull it over. So then you can see if there's anything you need to add. So I can see that I've missed up my shoulders. So I need to make sure I can go back in. If I undo, go back into drawing, and then I can work in and put my shoulders in. You can adjust them slightly if you're going off the page, but all I would recommend is that you make sure all your lines are connected again. So I'll come back out, I'll move my picture, and then I'm quite happy with my outline. So if you've got any questions, please just ask in the chat. I'll give you a couple of minutes just to keep going with your drawing, and then I will show you how to fill with colour. Is there anything you'd like to add, Dave?
No, that's brilliant, Laura. You know, I think if you see the way Laura did it and actually tracing over the face, it kind of gives the pupils an idea of the proportions of the face as well. You know, it teaches them about that the features almost have to be in these places to give a good likeness. And you can see Laura's just achieved a likeness there, just with kind of a pen line, basically. It's great, really good. It's really worked well, that, Laura.
Somebody's just asked me about how they draw glasses, so I've just cheated a little bit, and I've just added in some glasses from the shapes settings on Keynote. But what you could do is you could put in the shape setting, and then I could draw over the top of them. So if you look at how simple the structure is on Keynote of the glasses, that is basically how you want to be able to draw them. So if I were to draw, I'm going to do this in a different colour so that you can see me drawing the outline of them. But the way I would do glasses, I would start off with the basic outline. I'm doing this really quickly. And then work with the shape on the inside. I've done that quite roughly, but it's just so you can see. I can then delete my shape, and there's my glasses, and I'll show you how to fill from there. Are there any other questions about how you would do that? Anybody else got any other issues with different shapes? I think the joy as well of using Keynote for this type of task is that you can incorporate the shapes into it as well. So if pupils are struggling to maybe draw their glasses or different things like that, you can actually play about and look for the different shapes in Keynote in order to do that. And Dave's going to touch on this about the idea of personalizing it, individualizing it, and different things like that. With regards to the iPad, it might be that your iPad might not have the latest update. So it depends whether or not you can access the latest Keynote. Sorry, Rich, just have a look. I would just leave your teeth out and just go for the basic outline. Okay, I'm going to show you now how to fill. And this is one of my favorite things to do. So if you click on the little paint brush, like it's like a paint tube, like a traditional paint tube, and select your color. So you can see you've got a range of color tones at the bottom. And I'm a bit of a yellowy kind of skin tone. So I click on the paint tool, paint tube tool, and then I choose my color. And all I need to do is tap in my shape and it fills the color. Because I've locked the lines, I'm able to do that. Hopefully, I've just noticed that my eyebrow has filled as well. I should be able to fill that separately without doing the face. If, like me, you haven't got a solid shape, the nice thing about this tube is that you can draw around the shape as well. So I'll show you with this one, that if I just follow the shape, it can also fill that way. The tapping is just a really nice, quick way of doing this. I'm going to look at doing my hair, so I'm going to go for different shades of blonde. So I'm going to start off with a kind of orangey yellow colour. Again, just tapping and fill in the shape. And if you want to take it a step further, where you can add some tones into there, if again you use the paint tube tool, select the colour, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to follow the shape of the waves of my hair and just follow it back the same way. And I can be able to add in different tones, but following the movement of my hair as well. And you can bring this through to make it look a little bit more interesting. And you can vary up the different tones by just moving your way through the different colour palettes you've got coming through. The reason we've chosen to do this evening, because we felt that it was really accessible to all learners, as well as the our GCSE and Key Stage 3 learners. This is a great activity as well for Key Stage 2, so primary school, elementary school pupils to be able to do, because it's so accessible in the way that it's done, and the process is actually similar to the process that Julian Opie uses. So Julian Opie used to take photographs, project them onto the wall, and then he'd draw them, and he'd often use digital technologies as well to be able to create them. If you are unable to find the same colour, if you swipe across as well on the colour palette, press the little eyedropper, and then you're able to choose a skin tone, again, if you need to find it, or the same colour again. So that if you've missed a colour, just use an eyedropper. And think as well about using different colours for your shirts. So something I'd get the pupils to think about is maybe complementary colours. So with the yellow in my hair, purple would go really well because they're opposite each other on the colour wheel. So get them to think about the use of colour they choose in order to allow for a successful piece of artwork in relation to art terms. I'll give you a few more minutes to have a play around with that. I'll keep doing demos. If you've got any questions, please ask. And then I'm going to pass you over to Dave in a couple of minutes and we'll start looking at backgrounds and different things like that. Also, if you'd like to add some texture, the crayon tool has really lovely textures in it. So you could even add in as well, if you want to, in the hair, bringing in some textures coming through. So it'll give some variation on the texture as well as tone within the hair. Are there any more questions or anyone having any issues with anything? Some pupils as well do like to add in some pinkier tones on the lips. Again, you can use the tool to be able to do that, or you can just leave them skin tone. As you'd find in a lot of Julian Opie's work, he keeps it as simple as possible, keeping just the basic skin tone for the lip area. Gail, what I would recommend you do, zoom in closely on screen and just double check that your lines are closed. If your lines aren't closed, go back in with your original pen and then make sure they joined up. So for example, making sure the two shapes are joined up like I've highlighted there with the pink pen. It might be that there might be a tiny little gap somewhere, so just zoom right in and give it a go. Thanks, Nancy. I definitely agree. It's one thing that we always find, particularly, I use this to teach year 8 pupils. So they are aged 12 to 13. And I often find that the pupils who don't particularly engage with art because they feel that they can't do art, always feel a sense of pride and success when creating this piece of artwork, because they can see how it looks like them. There's a similarity there, and it often engages them. So I found that the boys have been far more engaged in the subject since doing these projects. If I give you 2 more minutes and then Dave will take you through the backgrounds. If I switch over, I'm going to switch my screen now over to Dave so that he can start introducing you to what he's going to do next.
Can you see and hear me? Laura, can you hear me? All
yeah,
right? Yeah,
all good, Dave.
Yeah, bro. Shall I go? Shall I give...
Are you ready to go, guys? If you can give us a little note in the chat whether you want a minute more before Dave starts the next part.
Yeah.
I think we're ready to go, Dave.
Yeah. Right, here's one. Obviously, I did this a little bit earlier. I don't know why I look so happy in my selfie there, but anyway, I've got. I always put a picture just at the side, something to work from. I'm just going to look at making it. Maybe if you're doing this with a slightly older group of students, you might want to kind of explore some light and dark in there in the face, and then we just look at putting a little bit of a background on as well. So again, if we just go into the paint again. Now the colour I think I used for the face is this one. If I want to, what you can do, if you swipe over to one side, you can actually make that colour slightly darker. So if you're not happy with those colours in there, if you swipe over, you've got this colour wheel, and you can just, you know, you can make it slightly darker. So I want to look for some darker tones. So I'm going to just put some, I'm going to draw around down this side of the face, just put a little bit of dark, do it fairly quick. So I'm just using that fill again, just to go around the edge like that. Okay, might be a bit too dark, but for the, you know, actually I'm gonna redo that. Sorry, it is a little bit dark. If you want to sample a colour, if you've used a colour before and you want to get back to that colour, you click this little eyedropper tool there and just click anywhere and it selects that colour for you. So I'm going to change the colour again, and I'm just going to go a touch, just a touch darker, a bit more. Okay, and I'm just going to put that back in again. Just want a little bit of dark down that side of the face. Okay, you can see that there. I want a little bit of dark around my eye, around here, so I'm going to put that in. I want some dark down the side of my nose, so I'm going to put that in there, and a little bit down around my neck there. Okay, at the same time now I want some, I need a little bit of dark in here as well. Okay, now I want lighter, so I'm going to go this one, and I'm going to put some light. This might be too light actually. Put some light there. No, it's way too light. So I'm going to go back to that one, and then I'm just going to make it very touch, just a slight touch lighter. You can hardly see that now. It's better. So you can see, I'm just trying to follow roughly where the light is. I've got a highlight down the side of my nose. A little bit of light here. Again, it's good because you can teach the students light and dark. So if the light source is coming from here, where will the light hit? Where will the dark hit? And again, with the hair, has it been used before? Not do. Okay, so I'm going to, the same way Laura did with that filler, I'm just going to draw some kind of random shapes like that, and it'll kind of create some light and dark. We'll go a little bit of dark there, put some of the darker areas in, and you get these nice kind of shapes which just give you okay. So that's kind of light and dark. Again, as you can see around the t-shirt, I've put some light and dark in there as well. You could spend ages doing that. It's entirely up to you how much detail you want to put in. I'm going to look at a background. It's better, me and Laura chatted about this earlier, it's better if you work in layers. I always say to the students, imagine that you're working on sheets of paper on the table, and you can work on one layer without affecting what's on the other layer. So I basically want to start, I'm going to add a new slide. I'm just going to get rid of that. Just going to get rid of that. Okay, and I'm just going to put a background on. If I go to background, I'm going to choose that one. Okay, so basically I just go into where it says background, and I can fill my background. You can draw on the background now. You can basically do whatever you want to it. This is one, let me see, I'm just going to copy that. This is one I made. Why is that not? Sorry, right, I'm just going to copy this. Right, this is one that I did in exactly the same way as we've just done the portrait. I've had an obsession with trainers for years and years. So this was like, if you look at one of the artists we're going to look at, it's kind of a selection of objects. So you could ask the students to choose objects that are personal to them, or you know, or the football teams, or trainers, or phones and things like that, whatever they want, and they can find the images, and then they can basically outline them, or they can draw them straight into there. And you can see that we can just put two fingers on there, and we can rotate that around. I'm going to copy that a few times and paste it, rotate it a little bit. Okay, we can actually, if I click where it says drawing at the top, you can actually fade the opacity of it. If you see, if we click on arrange at the top there, you can you can send that behind. So let me do it. Oops. For some reason it's not. There we go. So let's see, that's sent it behind. So if we copy that, paste it again. Again, you can make it bigger, you can rotate it. Doesn't just have to be that object, because you have, if you go back to the plus button at the top, again, like Laura said, you have lots of shapes. So we can put shape in. Again, we can rotate that. You can change the color. You can position that where you want. And then the easiest thing to do is to go back to your original drawing, click on it, click copy, and click on this one that I made earlier. You get the idea, and click paste, and you can then put it all together. Okay, so then when we press play, you can see you have a nice, I just use the same artwork there, but you can vary the artwork, you can change it and draw what you like, what the students like. You know, you can just get them to choose a range of objects to draw. But that's kind of what you see on the screen there is kind of what me and Laura would love for you to create, something along those lines. Really simple, as I say. That shoe's just drawn around. You know, it's really, really simple to do, but you can create some really effective artwork with it. Okay, so we'll give you a few minutes, Laura, do you think, just to do a little bit more? I'll stop my screen.
What we'll do, guys, we'll give you a couple of minutes to keep drawing, and we then will move on after that to show you how we can redefine the artwork. Really looking forward to seeing what your outcomes are.
That would be great, Laura. I can't wait either. You know, if we're hoping to get everybody, if everybody could share one on Twitter with that hashtag, and then we can kind of copy them off and save them all into a great, fantastic sort of slideshow piece of work. It would be brilliant.
Has anybody got any questions about how you can do different shapes or add anything in? Are we all good? Fab. So to do the eyedropper, if you go into the colours, I'll just see if I can just show you on my Mac rather than going back to the iPad. I tell you what, I'll change my sharing screen and we'll show you on the iPad. Okay, so if you go into the drawing, if you click onto the colours, and you just need to swipe over to the left and you will find the eyedropper there. Then you just click on the colour you want and it'll choose that exact colour. So if you've got this, swipe to the left and you'll find the eyedropper. Oh, wow, Carol, that's amazing.
Yeah, I have to say, Carol, that's absolutely superb. That's just what we want. Can you open that, Laura, and show everybody on that? I don't know.
Yeah,
Is that possible?
I'll go back to my Mac. There we are, guys. You should be able to see that. So this is Carol's example. It's fantastic, Carol. Well done. Some lovely textures coming through in the hair. That's worked really well. Thanks, John, for sharing the hashtags. So if we can use hashtag iPad Art 2020, as well as the other usual suspects of ADE 2020 and so on, but iPad Art 2020 will be what we'll be looking for to be able to share your outcomes. Oh, I've got Alicia and Serena send us some images through. I'll share those now, ladies.
Wow, Laura, this is fantastic. Some of these are brilliant, aren't they?
There's the hashtags for you guys. Let's have a look at some of these. Wow, Alicia, I love the flowers. I'll share them with everyone. Got Alicia's work, looking fantastic.
Fantastic.
Different textures coming through as well. Who else have we got? Serena's sharing as well. Oh, I love that you got your dog in there, Serena.
Wow.
Amazing. These are fantastic, guys. I love the little bit of identity you put in there as well with the fingerprint and the dog paws. Fantastic, Serena. And the tones you've got around the face as well. Amazing.
Totally agree, Laura. They're fabulous. Absolutely brilliant. Exactly what we wanted, aren't they?
They are. We've got Elder as well. Oh, love it. Another musician in the house. Amazing, Elder. All the different textures coming through as well, and love that you've got your essence, your personality coming through. Fantastic. Who else have we got coming through? Lisa as well, and Amanda. Oh, I love it, Amanda. Can't keep up with them all. They're fantastic. Love the books and the use of all the different shapes as well from Keynote. Fantastic. Who else? Lisa. Oh, I love it, Lisa. It's like a piece of abstract art going on in the background as well. Love it. I love how personal everyone's approaches are.
Yeah, they're great, Laura, aren't they? Absolutely fabulous. Great stuff.
Okay, how much time would everyone like? Do you want a couple more minutes, or are you happy to move on?
They're all coming through on Twitter, Laura, now as well. I can see them all popping up at the top. Brilliant stuff. Well, let's see what we can do with them next.
Got Matt coming through as well. I'll just share Matt as the last one. They're coming through on the chat. Oh, Matt, I don't know how big your file is, but it's taken a while to download. Got one from Lindsay as well. What I'll do, guys, we'll start. We'll continue to show you how we've developed our artwork, and then we'll come back and we'll have a look at some of the other ones. I've managed to download Matt and Lindsay, so we'll have a look at those once we've finished with the presentation. So we're going to show you now how we redefine our artwork and take it to the next level. So Dave, if you can just go mute for a moment, if possible, please.
What's that, sorry? What?
Do you mind just going on to mute, because I'm getting feedback, I think, from my end. Thank you. Okay, so if you can have your attention back, this is just an example of what Dave has shown you just now, but with a slightly different twist on it. So this one has been inspired by the artist Michael Craig Martin, and this is something that I explore with my pupils as well. So Michael Craig Martin creates artwork of famous people. So he's done examples like Zaha Hadid, the architect, George Michael. He's done himself and a few other celebrities in this style. And the idea is that the portraits stay the same, but the colours change and will impact the mood. So I'm going to show you some examples of those coming up. So we've taught you the rules. We've taught you how to make the artwork and thinking about colour, thinking about line, thinking about thickness. But like Pablo Picasso said, you've got to learn the rules so you can break them like an artist. So that's what we're going to look at next. We're going to take a brief look at the salmon model, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with. But for those of you who haven't come across this model but aren't too sure about it, it's the different levels of the use of technology. So we can look at substitution, which is a functional change. It could be that the textbook has become a digital textbook on the iPad rather than it having, it's not groundbreaking, but it is a useful substitution. It's useful. It means that pupils can have all their books in one place rather than having loads of different books. Augmentation is when it acts as a direct substitute with some improvements. So again, potentially, if you looked at a textbook that's been turned into something digital, you can put a video in there, which you can't in a standard textbook. So there's functional improvement there. What we've been looking at today with the Julian Opie, I would classify in between augmentation, where it's a direct substitute, through to modification. So it's allowed for significant task redesign. So it means that we've been able to create a digital piece of artwork, which we could have done on paper, but it allows for more complexity using the iPad. So maybe looking at the backgrounds and different things like that. We should be aiming for redefinition, not in everything, because if everything was redefined, it becomes the norm. But what we're going to look at next is how myself and Dave have redefined art. So we're going to be exploring the idea of moving interactive artwork, as well as the use of augmented reality within the art classroom. So this is a piece of simple redefinition where Dave has created a line drawing of himself, then used the line draw animate tool on Keynote. He wouldn't have been able to show this process on a traditional piece of paper. It would have just been the line drawing. So that is an example of redefinition of the task, but in its simplest form. The next examples go through to some work that I've done with my pupils. So my Mac doesn't crash. So these are examples of pupils' work where they have used the app Chatterpix to be able to do self-assessment. So they've done their Julian Opie style portraits, and then in order to self-assess their work, they've used the app Chatterpix. Hopefully you will be able to hear this. Are you able to hear that? Okay, what I'll do, guys, I'll share these examples on Twitter as well, because I'm working between my iPad and the Mac, which actually I can probably disconnect my iPad now.
Is how I've managed to replicate Julian Opie's art style. The feature of my work that could be improved the most is the hair. I could do this by giving it more texture. By using a different media, I could give more depth. To modify this work to make it look like me, I could add more detail to the skin, like freckles.
Okay, so that's just one example there of how they've used Chatterpix in order to show how they would develop and critically think about their work. These are examples of the Michael Craig Martin work. So the pupils create stills of the work. The portraits remain the same. Nothing ever changes about the portrait. The only thing that changes is use of colour. And then they use GIF to be able to change the colour. So these are an exact replica of the work of Michael Craig Martin, which he creates using digital drawing, and they're usually placed on light boxes as well. So this is the type of artwork that you'd see in the gallery. It gives the pupils then direct links to you know, what it is to be like an artist, how an artist makes the work, and it gives them deeper connections. This is another example where pupils have created their alter egos. So they look at the artist John Bergerman, who creates different monsters, very playful pieces of work. And then pupils take photographs of themselves to tell a kind of story about what's happening. So in the first one, you can see Becca with her little friendly popcorn, and she's eating the popcorn. And then here you can see Janvi with her sun in her cloud, where she's planned out where the photos are going and then placing the animation and her drawings into the piece of work. Going back to Della Desso, and in this piece, the student has made the grind drip onto the photograph. So you can see how it's telling a different part of the story. So even though it's fairly effective as a still piece, it becomes more effective through the use of GIF. And then we're looking at the use of green screen, going back to Julian Opie again, looking at how this can be enhanced. And so we've used a green screen feature on iMovie to be able to turn the pupils into their portraits. And I'm going to pass over to Dave for this one, as this is one of his pupils.
Over the last couple of years, I've started an Apple art group, basically, and group of year 10 students who just love to draw on the iPad. And last week I was sent this on Teams, that particular work, and I don't know how he's done it. I have to admit, I've sent him a message on Teams saying, you need to show me how to do this. It's done on Procreate, I think, but I'm not entirely sure, and I'm amazed by it. I think it's absolutely incredible that a year 10 student can teach himself to do that. But it's important in video and then drawing over the top of the frames. But it's absolutely incredible. Animation's tough at the best of times, but that and drawn over a video like that is just fabulous. But yeah, I think it's a great, as that comment there, I think it is great that we pick up stuff off the students as well, you know. Augmented reality is something that that we've both kind of embraced. So for those who don't know, augmented reality, a technology that superimposes a computer-generated image on a user's view of the real world, thus providing a composite view. We found, or I've found in particular, that this goes right across all the art specialisms. This is when we were at Institute last year. I absolutely loved the AR workshop, and this is, we had to illustrate a basically movie scene and bring it to life. So you create all the assets separately and then bring them to life. You can obviously add voiceovers. That's quite big. You can do whatever size you want, but it's absolutely such a great tool. This one here I was disappointed we didn't get to show these for the moderator this year. It might be running slightly slowly on what you can see there, but the idea of having a 2D black and white photograph on the wall, moderator comes in, you hand them an iPad, holds the iPad up to, scans a QR code, and basically the photograph comes to life. This next one, so you can see the photography working there. This one here, this was A-level 3D. And these two models here, they're actually models that they don't exist. They're augmented reality models that the students have made on Tinkercad and then creating them as a USDZ file, which you can then put into Reality Composer and create a link. You can see that they link to those pages in the sketchbook. So when you look through the iPad, basically those pages spring to life and you see their work basically pop up. And you can position those anywhere, as you'll see in the next slide. This is year 10 3D, GCSE 3D. So they've created sculptures. Basically, this is our new school, and the brief I gave them was to produce a piece of sculpture that basically reflects the change from the old school to the new school. They looked at Anthony Gormley and people like that. They had to create sort of a figurative sculpture, and we can now project through augmented reality. We can project those sculptures into a space like that. And this one, the picture I did earlier on, you can actually make the pictures come to life. That could be, obviously that's on my iPad, filmed on my iPhone, but it could be a 2D poster or piece of work, and you create the link image, and then you can, that's interactive. So if you touch the screen on that shoe or touch the screen on the ball, then they will move as you basically program it to do so. So it's about interactivity and bringing the things to life.
So this is the app Artivive, and this is something I've been exploring with my pupils. So it's a really simple process where I've used the example that I've shown you today, changed the different color backgrounds and made it into a GIF and then put it into Artivive. So the way that it works is that you put the trigger image, which is the image in the background here, into the app alongside this image. And when the app is held up, the trigger image on the wall starts the animation for you. So it shows how a piece of artwork can come to life. So a few of you have been asking about different links to artists. So these are a few here, and we'll be able to, we've got loads that we're able to tell you about, but we thought we'd just highlight some of these. So Julian Opie is the main one that we were looking at today. Here's the example of the Blur album cover. Michael Craig Martin was the example with the change in portrait. So you can see the example of the George Michael work he's created. Patrick Caulfield is another excellent example which lends itself particularly as well to younger learners or learners who struggle with the simple shapes and patterns. So the nice thing is you could add in examples maybe of pictures of wallpapers and use masks with those as well in Keynote. So there's lots of things you could do with those. David Hockney was this is the daffodil image that triggered my community project at the beginning of lockdown with some more examples. David Hockney's actually had an iPad exhibition and there's books as well where he talks all about the iPad. This become his main tool now for creating artwork. Della Desso was the example linked to photography. So Della Desso does work with Nike, McDonald's, quite active on Instagram and Twitter, and what I particularly like is Della Desso's responded to my pupils' work, as well as John Bergerman, which is another one I mentioned earlier, as is Sarah Graham. So if you interact with the artists on Twitter, they will often respond to the pupils' outcomes. Subway Doodle was the example of work with the monsters that Dave showed you. Dr. Propolis, another one that does illustration on top of photography. And here are a few examples of other artists that have inspired our pupils. Is there anything you'd like to add, Dave?
No, you've said it all there, Laura. Just, there's lots and lots of different artists out there, but they're just kind of a handful of the ones that that I think we've used and that are relevant to what we've shown tonight, really.
So if you'd like any more information or see what we do or contact us, these are our Twitter handles. So I'm at Mrs. Hilltout Art and Dave is at Dave Carless 77. Obviously reach out to us on the community as well. We're doing a second session based on this with redefinition, where we delve a little bit deeper in how to create the augmented reality pieces of work, as well as the interactive pieces. And we'll have some more examples where my photography pupils are using video as well as the drawing and different things to be able to create artwork. So that's next week at 5 p.m. And these are the drawing apps that we would recommend. Dave, you're a big fan of Procreate, aren't you? That's the one that you tend to use most.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I use Procreate, and it's like nothing I've ever experienced before. And I do everything on Procreate now, all my illustration work and everything. I do everything on Procreate, and the students use it as well. The capabilities are fabulous.
What I would suggest, as we're a one-to-one iPad school, we're an ADS school as well. We tend to vary the different apps. So we always start year 7 with brushes and Keynote for drawing. And then we build up to Adobe Illustrator and eventually onto Concepts and Adobe Fresco and Procreate. We don't tend to use Procreate so much in our school because we've got 1,200 students in our school. So we wouldn't be able to buy the licenses for those. So these other options are free as well. So Adobe Fresco's there's some free elements on there, the same with Illustrator Draw. Tai Sui Sketches is part of schoolwork, and also Concepts. There is a paid version, but there's a lot that you can do. There's watercolor brushes in there, there's marker pens. So if you are a DT teacher as well, there's those options in there. We would just like to say thank you. And if you've got any questions, please ask them in the chat now. If you can use the hashtags iPadArt2020, ADE 2020, we will create a collage of ADs and everyone else who participated. That'd be fantastic. So if you want to put your Twitter handles onto your portraits as well, that would be great, and then it can be an access for the whole community. If you've got any questions, please ask. And I just want to finish on this amazing quote by David Hockney, and I think it's something every pupil would agree with. I've got an iPad, what a joy. I think that's one of my favorite things ever. Oh, thank you so much.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
Amazing, Kelly. Fantastic. Thank you, guys. Like I said, if you think of any other questions outside of the session, reach out to us on the community. This session's been recorded as well, so I can share it out. And make sure you post your pictures on Twitter for us. We can't wait to see them all.